In today's video, we have a huge list of NHL players on waivers today. Over 40 guys could be possibly claimed by tomorrow afternoon. We'll have to wait and see on that. We have lots of news on injury updates, signings, and some trade rumors concerning teams like the Ottawa Senators, the New York Islanders, and the Chicago Blackhawks. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot of news here to cover today. Of course, we've already seen a small trade take place between the Canucks and the Florida Panthers. Earlier, there is a video posted on the channel going over the full details. So if you missed that, you can check that out. Essentially, a young defenseman, Allred Juolevi, was traded from Vancouver over to Florida for a couple of prospects / minor leaguers. Actually, one guy actually has NHL experience, about 80 games, and actually should fit into the Canucks lineup. So it might actually turn out to be a pretty decent trade for both sides. Today, though, I want to get started with the updates on the injury front. The Maple Leafs lost another key player to injury in their last preseason game against the Ottawa Senators. Forward Ilya Mikheyev had an awkward, unfortunate fall. And I'm not sure if it's like a wrist or hand, or like it fell on his arm awkwardly. And the updates from Sheldon Keefe indicated he's going to be out long term. It did not look good at all. As soon as it happened, you knew it was likely going to be bad, and they confirmed that news. So obviously, with the Maple Leafs trying to finalize their forward roster, like I said, a lot of the guys they've brought in as either free agent signings or whatnot this offseason, like you got your David Kampf, your Michael Bunting, and all those guys are actually fitting in nicely. Today they have another guy on waivers. They already put down guys like Curtis Gabriel, so they do have some options here within their forward group. Thankfully, they have lots of guys on standby, but Mikheyev is going to be out for an extended time. We also got word that the Alexander Ovechkin injury does not appear to be quite as bad, so that's good news on that front. No word yet if he'll be able to play opening night, but at least this doesn't appear to be anything that's going to keep him out longer term as he kicks into a new contract here with the Capitals and begins that final sprint towards trying to track down Wayne Gretzky's all-time goals record. So we'll have to keep an eye on that here. He's going to have a few years to do it, but he needs to have a good pace, especially this year and next, especially, I think, to really have a good shot at it. If he happens to fall back and, even a 30-goal season, which is good, for NHL standards by players his age, is really good, but based on the path that he's been down, he needs to keep up some pretty solid 35, 40-goal seasons here to have a real shot at it. As far as some signings and updates on some PTOs here, the New York Islanders have released defenseman Erik Gustafsson from his professional tryout, so he will not be getting a contract on Long Island, but word is he is heading back to sign with the Chicago Blackhawks. So obviously he impressed his old team enough to take him back. Don't have the exact terms of the contract, but I would assume likely going to be a 1-year league minimum deal is more than likely here what we're looking at. The Islanders also did finally register a few other contracts with players that we already knew were with them, obviously, like Zdeno Chara and Zach Parise, but we know the terms. They're both 1-year deals, both paying $750,000, but they both also have bonuses built in that could pay them an additional $750,000. So the average annual value could be as much as $1.5 million. So depending on the exact structure of those bonuses, they could have $750,000 for each player, possibly count against next year's cap. So that could be something that might have to be factored in here into next year's decisions. We're going to talk a little bit about the Islanders here a little bit further into this video as well, because I don't think they're quite done, at least trying not to be, settling completely on their roster here. They still have just under 24 hours to get things sorted out and settled upon. When it comes to other PTOs, the Avalanche have decided to sign defenseman Jack Johnson, who was in their training camp on a PTO. He gets a 1-year contract, $750,000. And the New Jersey Devils also signed Jimmy Vesey, who was in their training camp on a professional tryout. He gets a 1-year deal valued at $800,000. So certainly some cheap deals for some veteran players looking to continue on their NHL careers. But we did get a pretty significant signing today, and that's a new extension for Mika Zibanejad and the New York Rangers. Now, of course, we've talked a lot about that possibility. We've also talked a lot about the Rangers being linked to Jack Eichel. Some feel that this contract takes them out of the Eichel sweepstakes. I'm not completely sold on that, but it does kind of reduce things a little bit. Obviously, they can only have so much money tied up, and outside of this contract with Mika, they do have some other, fairly expensive long-term deals like the Jacob Trouba contract and Chris Kreider, Artemi Panarin, etc. They have guys like Kakko and Lafreniere going to be needing their second contracts here in the not-too-distant future, so that's going to be, cost-affected in there too. So, at the end of the day, they it would be tricky, but I'm not completely sold on the fact that they're completely out of it. But we'll see. Now, the contract for Zibanejad is an 8-year deal, paying him $8.5 million. That totals $68 million. And out of the $68 million, $60 million of it is paid in the form of signing bonuses. His actual salary yearly is only around $1 million the whole way through. And he gets big chunks of signing bonuses pretty much every year all the way through. They get a high percentage of it here in that form up front, which is... obviously it's something a lot of teams don't care for, but, in my opinion, it should only be reserved for your superstar players. So, obviously, you want to give them a little bit more, I guess, preferential treatment since they're such a high-performing athlete for your team. But ultimately, I think this is a really good bargain for the Rangers. Zibanejad is definitely worth 8.5. Based on his age, I think somewhere more, comfortable with a 5-6 year extension, but ultimately to keep that AAV to be a little bit more manageable at 8.5, an 8-year deal was necessary. I think if they would have went 6 years, I think he would have been looking at 9.5, 10. I'm a little bit surprised it's not more, even on an 8-year deal, to be honest. I mean, the guy's been absolutely, a top-notch number one center for them, 40-plus goals, really productive, and certainly worth every penny. I think this is a great extension for Zibanejad and the Rangers, and should work out absolutely wonderfully as long as he can stay healthy. Of course, as they later they get in their careers, those 8-year deals do get a little bit riskier, but at the end of the day, when you're getting into years 7 and 8, the last year or two, I don't think the Rangers are really going to care too much what happens at that point. A lot of teams don't, because for one, a lot of the managers and people involved know they're likely going to be employed at the time. And secondly, at that point, if they've gotten a lot of success over the first half of the contract, let's say they've won a Stanley Cup or they've gotten, uber productive seasons out of them, then they've gotten their money's worth anyways. So at the end of the day, they tack that on just to make it work money-wise. Now, let's get into the long list of waiver players today. There's all kinds, which I believe the total is 43 in total here today. One player not included is Chicago Blackhawks youngster Alex Nylander, which I know a lot of people were speculating that he would be on waivers today. But here's the catch, is the Chicago Blackhawks were actually able to get an exception and from the NHL to extend his waiver exemption. So last year technically would have been his final year of being exempt to need waivers to go to the minors. But Alex Nylander did not really play hockey last year. He was out injured for the entire season. So because of that, in fact, he didn't play, they gave the Chicago Blackhawks an exception. So Alex Nylander's waiver eligibility, it does not kick in until next year now. So he does not need waivers. So that gives them some much needed flexibility to be able to move him around and not have to worry about that, which I know a lot of people may not have been aware of that exception was coming through for them when the talk first arose about him here over the last 24 to 48 hours. But I'm going to give you a couple of graphics here on the screen to go through these players. I'll go through a lot of the names, but not every single one of them, and talk about some of the guys I think are a little bit more well-known and might actually have a shot at being claimed here. We got the Anaheim Ducks with a couple of players, including Sam Carrick and Jacob Larson. You've got the Carolina Hurricanes with a number of guys, including defenseman Max Lajoie, forward Josh Levo, and Stefan Nason. I'm not really sure about any of those guys getting claimed, but you never know. I mean, especially Levo and Nason do have a decent amount of experience. Columbus has young defenseman Mikko Lehtinen, who came over on a contract from Europe last year from the Maple Leafs. Didn't quite cut it there. I thought he had real potential. He was the top defender over there the year before, and just hasn't been able to make it work in North America here yet. And, of course, even with Columbus, on a weaker team, but of course they've had some good blue line additions this offseason as well, like Bean and Boakfitz, etc. But still can't get him in there. So we'll see if he can go to the minors or if he gets claimed. Kevin Stenlund and Gabriel Carlson also on that list for Columbus today. The Blackhawks have a couple of goalies in Malcolm Subban and Colin Delia. I'm not sure that either one of those guys will get claimed, but you never know, I guess. The Avalanche have defenseman Jacob McDonald. It looks like they're keeping youngster Justin Barron to get that final spot on their roster on the D-core. So McDonald goes on waivers to make that room. Dallas has Alex Petrovic, who's been mostly a minor leaguer the last few years. Detroit has a couple of players, including Taro Hirose and Riley Barber. the Edmonton Oilers have some interesting names, including veteran Kyle Turris, who really has not been able to make things work in Edmonton. Didn't make it work the last year or two. He was in Nashville really ever since he's left Ottawa. His first year in Nashville was okay, and then after that, everything's really fallen off a cliff here, and his career has gone downhill big time. They also have William Blajesson on waivers today as well. I have my feeling here that Turris probably won't be claimed, but some teams you just never know, I guess. Christopher Gibson's on waivers from the Florida Panthers. Austin Wagner from the LA Kings. New Jersey has Freddie Gauthier, who they just signed, but he signed to a two-way contract, and he does need waivers to go down. So that was where he's heading if he clears. Nashville has Michael McCarron and Connor Ingram. Doubtful we see a claim there. Maybe Ingram, you never know, but definitely not McCarron. Ottawa has a veteran forward here, but mostly a minor league veteran, Andrew Agozzino. Some thought he might stick around as the fourth-line center because they do have some injury issues up in Ottawa, and we're going to talk about them in the next segment here in the trade rumor front because they are looking for a little bit of help that way, but apparently Agozzino's not the guy. The Lightning have a very interesting young player in Alex Barré-Boulet, who has a couple years on a term on his contract, but it's cheap money. And he's a young player with a lot of potential. I would not be shocked to see him claimed. And, of course, they also have veteran defenseman Freddie Claesson as well. Toronto Maple Leafs are probably holding their breath right now, hoping Adam Brooks clears. Another player that they've had to put through the waiver wire that they really don't want to lose. But, I'm surprised we haven't seen the Leafs make more moves that way and make some trades. But they've been lucky so far this year. I know last year, even the year before, they've had some guys that they've, gotten lost through the waiver wire and hasn't been kind to them. But so far this year, been okay. But Brooks might be that guy. Wouldn't be shocked at all if somebody takes a chance on him. He's a good young player looking for more of an opportunity. The Canucks have Travis Hamonic on here. Might be one of the more interesting names on this list. Of course, he was signed to a 2-year deal. I know some are saying that the Canucks really didn't do their due diligence here because clearly they were not aware of the vaccination issue that they've run into. And of course, being in Canada and all the restrictions of playing in all the Canadian markets, it's a problem for players that are not vaccinated. He's going to miss a ton of time. He did not opt out. I know there seemed like there was some hope maybe they could trade him, but I don't know any team that's really just going to take him off their hands because, again, for any team, especially the Canadian teams, but the American teams too, players that are not vaccinated is not an attractive thing right now because of all the restrictions in place. So I have my doubts he'll be taken, even though he's a interesting player that some teams might find useful. It's just likely not going to happen. So of course that's going to hurt the Canucks when it comes to their cap issues. I don't know what they're going to do if he doesn't clear, to be honest. I'm not sure if there's any other additional plans here. They also have Philip Di Giuseppe and Justin Bailey on waivers. The Caps have goalie Zach Fucale. You never know, but probably will clears. The Golden Knights also have a couple of guys, including former Canucks Sven Baertschi and, of course, Patrick Brown. So, yes, I'm a little bit out of breath, but that's all the players on waivers today. Surprisingly, everybody from yesterday cleared, and there were some very interesting names on yesterday's waiver wire as well. So we'll have to see where things go, but we could certainly get some very interesting players changing teams here in the next, I guess under 24 hours at this point. By the time, 2 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow it kicks in and we find out how everything ended up going. And of course, teams have until 5 o'clock Eastern after that to settle their rosters, report them to the NHL, and be cap compliant. So we could see some more juggling. Wouldn't be a shocker if we saw a trade or two like we saw today. I don't foresee anything too major, but you just never know. Probably some minor juggling at the very least to get some depth pieces in there to make things work and be compliant. Now, before we jump into the last segment of our video, I do need to pause for a moment and acknowledge our channel sponsor, Manscaped. Top Shelf Hockey is proud to be sponsored by Manscaped. And guess what? Hockey fans are buzzing because hockey is back. Want to know what else is buzzing? The Lawnmower 4.0 from our friends at Manscaped, who are the global leaders in male grooming, trusted by over 2 million men worldwide. I highly recommend the Performance Package 4.0, which includes their new state-of-the-art Lawnmower 4.0, as well as some other great features. The lawnmower itself has a 7,000 RPM motor, a new multifunction switch that can engage as a travel lock, gives you the ability to turn on an LED spotlight as well for a more precise shave. Also, as I've mentioned on numerous occasions before, Manscaped is about much more than just a trimmer. They have everything, all aspects aspects covered in male grooming, including some great formulations like their brand new ultra premium body wash to keep you smelling great all day long. It's certainly a big hit here. I absolutely love it. They also have other exfoliators and gels to keep all aspects of your grooming needs covered. I highly recommend you check out manscaped.com. Use promo code TSH for 20% off and free shipping. That's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com using promo code TSH. So thanks very much for watching that promotional content. I do greatly appreciate it. As I mentioned, we want to take a quick look at some trade rumors involving 3 teams here today. First up, the Ottawa Senators. Now, of course, we've talked about them recently in the whole Brady Tkachuk scenario. We're not going to talk about Brady today. We don't really have any additional information to suggest that he's being traded outside of the comments the other day from Dreger, indicating on TSN radio that he felt if Brady signed a short-term deal that he likely would end up getting moved. But at the end of the day, the Senators have a bit of an issue here with injuries. They have guys like Austin Watson's going to miss the first month of the year with an ankle injury. We saw Colin White go down. He's going to be out for, 4 to 6 months, I think it was. And they can only have so much youth in that lineup. Many feel that the Senators are a prime team to take a veteran forward on waivers or pull off a trade to add at least one guy in as a depth piece. They do have a young player or two that they could add in here, like Sokolov, for example. He's a prime guy who's kind of on the bubble of being NHL ready and getting more reps, but it seems like they'd rather have a guy like a Tyler Ennis, who they just signed. Obviously, he's going to be there, but they could really need some short-term help. I mean, at the end of the day, the Sens are pretty well set when it comes to their blue line and their goaltenders, but they, without Brady being there too, that leaves 3 spots open. They only filled 1 with Ennis. They only have so many young guys, like I mentioned. So look for Ottawa to maybe pick up at least 1 player ahead of tomorrow's roster being set. The New York Islanders are another team to watch. Obviously, we saw some guys go through waivers before, like Richard Panik, Thomas Hickey. They both cleared. They'll go to the minors, but I don't believe for a second that Lou is done trying to trade them. They would like to get the rest of their cap hit off the books if they're able to. Like in the case of Panik, between the amount retained on the Detroit side of that trade and what they can bury with the minor league assignment, there's only like a 200,000-300,000 that's counting on the cap, but still, if they can move that on and get that a little bit of extra breathing room, that would be preferential. And of course, you get Kiefer Bellows is still there too. I'm surprised he hasn't been put through waivers, probably because, like many of these guys, they're really concerned about losing him, but I'm not entirely convinced as well that he's really in their plans to be a prominent role in opening night. So wouldn't be shocking if he was moved, and there's even some question marks around Leo Komarov, although they do seem to really like this guy, even though I know there are some Isles fans, rightfully so in my opinion, do get frustrated by how they utilize him and how much he gets on the top lines, etc. But the Islanders still another team. I don't think Lou Lamoriello is done here. A lot of talk today that Lou is still working on a deal or two behind the scenes. Wouldn't be shocked if he pulls something off before the opening night rosters have to be submitted tomorrow afternoon. And same with Chicago. I mean, like I mentioned earlier about the Hawks, when it comes to Alex Nylander, obviously he can go down, but with the emergence of Jonathan Toews coming back, many felt going into the year that Dylan Strome would not remain with the club if Toews was able to play and come back this year. And certainly for a team that's obviously eating up a lot of salary cap space with all the different moves that they've made this year. They picked up Marc-Andre Fleury. Obviously, they traded for Seth Jones, traded for Caleb Jones. They have a lot on their plate there, but still, with Toews and Strome both being in the lineup, there's still a good chance that Dylan Strome could be a depth piece on a lot of other teams and kind of free up about $3 million in salary cap space, especially with the word we've heard just before recording this here that Eric Gustafsson is likely heading back there on a short-term, cheaper contract as well. So Chicago, definitely another team I feel is quite likely to maybe make a last-minute trade here before we get into the rosters being submitted and everything being compliant for tomorrow evening. So obviously the NHL season's only a couple of days away. Certainly I hope everybody's thinking about making some predictions on what you think is going to happen this year before the season actually starts between Monday and Tuesday. There will be, look for at least a couple of different videos making some predictions here on the channel. We'll get into that here to have a little bit of fun ahead of the season starting. So of course, if you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.